don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Gate Expectations Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the Gate Expectations Podcast, where I bring in a weekly guest, talk all things Yu-Gi-Oh!, and get to know a little more about each person I talk to. It's the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast that is run by a full-fledged journalist such as myself. This is episode 48. If you haven't checked it out yet, you can check out earlier podcasts with guests like Crush Cards, Ruggles, Yassine, Pack, Distant Coder, and many more. My guest for this week is a Remote Duel Invitational champion, and he's looking for his second title this weekend. He's been known as the runner-up king, a world's competitor, and a duelist academy coach. It's Esala Wathuthantrige. Esala, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So, we got the Remote Duel Invitationals coming up, and you've been a champion before. What do you expect to see going into this weekend?
So, ever since I won the first one, I've been talking to Konami, like even before that, about taking on the commentary role, and since then, because they just liked how I spoke, they've taken me on. So I do commentary for all the invitationals. As far as I know, like they have not ever asked me not to do one. So I will be doing commentary for this one that's coming up, and as well as the Latin American one in a couple of weeks. And it's weird because this event is so specific, where it's in a time frame before the Remote Duel YCS, before the set release of Birth of Destiny. It is in time for the set release of Legendary Duels Season 8, with the ones with Synchrostorm. But because the deck lists are due on Thursday and the official street date is Friday, the players aren't allowed to play it. So it's a very weird event which no new cards are going to be used. It's almost the exact same as the Invitational before. It was just a ban list that didn't really change like a whole lot. So I don't know. I feel like it's not as interesting as it could be, but I expect a lot of people to care, and I think the people that are playing in this tournament are going to take a lot of steps to make sure that they have success in it. And I think it matters to them, and I think that'll be worth talking about when we get to the Invitational.
And you've been a perennial top player for quite some time, and now that you're telling me you're going to be on the broadcast side of things, is this a role that you're looking forward to being a part of, or how do you feel about it?
Oh yeah, I love it. So I mean, being so involved in Yu-Gi-Oh, I generally do love talking about it, and being able to commentate games, like that was something I did for like our own like Duelist Academy things, and being able to do it officially for Konami is absolutely cool. I get to see all the games happen. I get to see what happens behind the scenes, and I just like learning a lot from the entire experience.
Yeah, because you join like an elite company of former players that that aren't Konami employees or weren't before, that now get to be part of the commentary team. Like Billy Brake being like one of the big shining examples, and Zachary Butler also being kind of a new acquisition of it, and now you are coming in as the part of the commentary. So you really get to enjoy, like, be a part of like a very exclusive list of people that get to be a part of this. Something that I'm sure a whole ton of people would kill for, to have the same role that you're going to get this weekend.
Yeah, it's definitely cool, and it takes a lot of effort to get in it, because the layers of approval that had to happen, like I had to go through an interview, and like my name was on a list, and I want to say for over a year. So it was definitely a long process of being able to do the job, but I'm happy to be doing it, and I think it's just it's been great the last couple of times I've done it too.
So you've done previous events before this?
Yeah, I did the last couple invitationals, and I think one more before that. So I've done 4 invitationals total.
Okay. Was this something that you were like really pushing and really striving for, or was this something that just kind of came along and you just agreed to do it when you were asked?
So I didn't push super heavy on it, because I don't ever think like pushing too hard will get you too much of anything. I don't want to get people mad at me, but I did mention it a couple of times that I would be interested, and if they ever needed anyone, that I was down. And it came to the point where they were in need of people. So especially people that were keeping up with the game a lot more. So that's where I kind of fit in, because like I'm less as like core commentary. I'm more of the analyst. So I'm the guy that's supposed to know what every card does. I'm supposed to know every interaction. I'm supposed to know why these cards are being played in this tournament right now. And I take pride in that role, because I definitely do. I play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh, so I pride myself in knowing all those things, and I fill my role.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the role that you see a lot of professional sports. We call it the color commentator. It's their job to basically know everything and describe what is going on. You have your play-by-play commentator, which pretty much tells you what is happening. And then your role, the color commentator, is basically here to describe what goes on. And, being a Duels Academy coach, a top player for years, which is also a role that's kind of filled up by, the color commentator, like professional sports players that have long since retired. And that's kind of where you come, except I don't want to, you're not retired. You're still very well active in the game, but it's always refreshing to see, someone who knows the game very well, also like a very familiar face, come in and then actively take on this role because, you're being noticed by Konami. Like you're a big representative of them, and they know that you're going to be a great fit for it. So I think that says a lot about your knowledge and character being selected by them as part of the commentary broadcast team to be a part of them.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was definitely a process. I didn't get in immediately, but I had to get their trust, and once I have that, I just have to hope not to lose it. And yeah, being a current player does have its ups and downs for it, or I guess it's only ups and downs for them and more of immediate choice for me because they have asked me to do everything. It's just I have the choice of choosing of whether or not I want to commentate the event or if I want to play it. Let's say for the Remote Duel YCS, I had the option to commentate that as well, but I opted to play the event. And certain weekends, I just have things that I have to do. I've already made plans well in advance, and they were okay with me not being able to do those events, and they'll still take me on for later events. And for the YCS coming up, because recently Pasadena and Utrecht just got announced, and I do have the choice, I assume, if I want to commentate those events or if I want to play them. And they're okay with that because they do want to make sure that they're having people still active in the game. And me choosing to play is me showing interest in the game. That's something that they're very okay with.
Yeah, and before we go on to that news, I just want to step back for a bit and kind of go with the commentary for a little bit because this is something that I haven't had really a guest on for, so it's a really unique situation. Can you walk me through the process of you kind of planning your weekend out for doing commentary up until the actual day itself and how that process goes?
Okay, so the very first time, it was a Remote Duel Invitational, and they shipped us equipment, right? So similar to the players in the Remote Duel Invitational that had to create their own little setup, and they were guided through the process, but they had their one camera overhead and then their camera facing them, and they just had to put up all the bars. We have to do a very similar thing, but it takes up a lot more space because we have to put up a green screen behind us. We have this other camera with a ring light facing us directly on our face and everything. So the setup was a lot more difficult for that kind of thing. Having done both, I would say it's much more annoying doing the commentary setup rather than the player setup. I would rather do the player setup every time. And we do have to be up very early depending on the invitational. So for the North American Invitational, we have to be on set, I guess, if you want to call it. We have to be there approximately 1 to 2 hours before the players do to just make sure we can rehearse and make sure our audio is working and do all those kind of things, which when we were doing it at home was kind of fine because, I would just roll out of bed, shower, whatever, and then hop into my chair and it would be okay. And then for the Latin American ones, we go by Latin American time, so we're starting approximately 3 hours earlier than the regular invitational. So that usually meant I had to be in my chair at 6 a.m. So, which again was more reasonable when you're doing it at home and you don't have to do that much to get ready. It's the same schedule for current invitationals, except we're not doing it at home anymore. We gave back all the stuff that they shipped us. We are doing it at the office now. So I have to get ready to drive anywhere between 40 minutes if there's no traffic to an hour and a half if there is traffic to the Konami office. And if I have to be there at 6 a.m., that means I have to be up sometimes at 3 a.m. So it's a bit more of a process on that one. And as far as getting prepared for it goes, I want to say it's mostly just making sure I get enough sleep so that I'm not groggy. Because once I'm in the chair, I have to provide a certain kind of energy, right? I can't just look depressed. I can't look like I'm so tired that I can't that it is me working, sitting there talking about it, right? But then once it comes to the actual game part, like I just do this so much as the daily part of my life. I don't have to prepare. Like I just go and then like I see the cards in front of me and I know exactly what to talk about because I just say what I think,
Yeah.
honestly. So yeah, I don't know. Like preparing for the actual commentary that I do, I don't have to do very much. I I show up and I'm good to go.
Yeah, fair enough. Because when I've done color commentary, because I'm also a professional sports broadcaster as well. When I do the color commentary part, it's really more just like seeing and then just kind of relaying it back to whatever. As opposed to if you were like a play-by-play, you kind of have to research names, especially if you're doing like hockey or like basketball or something. You got to memorize like 10 names like immediately and then kind of broadcast it out there. As opposed to being a color commentator, you can kind of kick back, relax. You have the two names there already, and you can just focus on what you see on the cards. And since you've played this game for a long amount of time, rather like very consistently and well in depth, that pretty much comes second nature to you at this point.
Yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm. So, and now that you mentioned, Pasadena just got announced, and that's very very close to you, if I recall, because I believe you're from Los Angeles, one of my favorite cities in the United States. My favorite hockey team is from there, and I've been there several times. So, there's a little bit of envy coming from my end to you. Uh, have you ever made a decision on if you're going to play or commentate Pasadena, or is that something you're still contemplating at this point?
Oh, they knew from the get-go that I was always playing YCS
Yeah.
Pasadena. There is no
Mm-hmm.
question. I'm going to Utrecht right after. Like it, I have been waiting for IRL to come back for so long
Mm-hmm.
that this means everything to me. I will for sure 100% be playing the YCS.
And speaking of playing in real life, this kind of goes back to the nickname that you used to be called, the second place king, where you've topped so many events, come second place in so many real life events, that you actually got your first title as a remote duel invitational champion back in April. And that's something I'm going to assume that you've been chasing for quite some time, and then you finally got the win. First of all, how did it feel to actually get that win after coming second place after so many times?
I I didn't really know how to feel because it
Mm-hmm.
still felt different, right? Like I have to keep telling myself that it's not the same because it wasn't a YCS. It wasn't
Yeah.
like the thing that I had been working exactly for. It was this thing created during this time period.
Mm-hmm.
And I've grown to appreciate it a lot more over time, especially since like realizing the perks that come with it. Like they don't really tell you much about what it means to win an invitational, and it's not really defined if any of this will last. But at the last remote duel in YCS, rather, invitational champions got buys.
Mm-hmm.
So if that pertains to this coming remote duel YCS, and then still moving forward to actual YCSs in person,
Mm-hmm.
then winning a remote duel invitational is the same as winning a UDS, which is no longer available as a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And that would mean this is an absolutely insane win to have.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's one thing I'm starting to see more of, and something I've been kind of like agreeing more with, is that these events, these wins, they actually mean a lot more than what people think, because there's some discussion, there's some debate about remote dual YCS is not being like a real event or whatnot. We've had like PPGs and ultra reality games, ARGs, that have been like that people don't count as tops, but I legit think that these events here like are legitimate tops, and they actually do like mean something and have like a real attachment to it. I don't know if you would agree with me or not, but that's personally my thought on these.
The remote duel YCS, like I do hear people like arguing that it doesn't count, but like the only real argument for that is that it was remote duel. Like you can argue that it wasn't as much of an international event because people had to play in their specific region, which
Mhm.
is not typical for YCS, right? YCS are international events more so than any other Yu-Gi-Oh event is,
Mhm.
and that's like part of the allure of them. But I want to say, like, as far as like just the prizing of it, like the way they made it feel special, because
Mhm.
the trophy alone was just so cool compared to like a lot of the trophies in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like I couldn't possibly not count the remote duel ICS. Like they were
Mhm.
giving so much for it, and like so many people showed up, right? Like the
Mhm.
numbers were there, the prizing was there. Like if you look at all of the winners from each of the remote duel invitation, like I mean, sorry, remote duel YCSs,
Yeah.
a lot of them were just fantastic players to begin with. Like there was Andres Torres, there's Rafael
Mhm.
Nevin. Pack is definitely an up and comer. Like this is like his first top, but he's already doing so well. And like you can argue that he's really new and he did it so fast, but he's putting more effort in than more people in the game currently. He plays
Mhm.
more Yu-Gi-Oh than probably anyone, so it makes sense that he would do so well. And to see all these players that have been historically good or just putting in the effort get rewarded, like there was a good storyline there, and I think it's really hard not to count any of those people.
Yeah, and there's an argument that can be made for, these things being legit, considering that, now that we're starting to see more and more like in real life play coming back, we don't necessarily know if Remote Duels is going to hang around or not. So assuming it doesn't hang around, you're going to be part of this very short list of champions that have been able to like thrive under Remote Duel, not discounting the talent you guys had when you played in real life, but definitely like a very small list that you get to be part of in being a champion during like the COVID times of being like a Remote Duel champion, either invitational or a YCS.
I mean, yeah, I never really thought about it that way as like someone that got to do something in that specific period of time. I just think of like it's just something that happened. I don't know, like I wouldn't really characterize this as like different, but yeah, I don't know. I guess that's cool being one of the few people have success in Remote Duel. It's weird though, because and one of the things I do get made fun of for being a Remote Duel Invitational champion is the people that also are Remote Duel Invitational champions. Like a lot of people that you haven't really heard of before, and then one player that got immediately banned for cheating at the Remote Duel YCS. So that really like puts a weird eye on the whole tournament, right? People that got away with things because of the aspect of Remote Duel and how much more you can get away with, which honestly I don't even think it is that much more. It's just people are willing to try things a little bit more outlandish when realistically the people that were going to cheat against you at Remote Duel, they were going to cheat against you at a YCS anyway. They like the people that are trying this hard to cheat are usually very bad at the game. So
do you feel like the Remote Duels it's a little bit easier to cheat, or the capability to cheat as opposed to playing in real life, or do you think differently about that?
I think it's easy to cheat when your opponent isn't paying attention, but that's like just true no matter where you are. Like there are like more avenues to cheat, like if you really want to get crazy about it. But like overall, like a lot of people aren't putting that kind of effort in. And I think if you're getting cheated at Remote Duel, you're not paying enough attention, because usually you can very easily tell when you're something they're not supposed to be.
Yeah, and you could also argue maybe it's not easier, but it's just created a new avenue of like creative ways to potentially cheat, because again, it's a little bit easier to, kind of pick up your cards a bit, maybe slightly off camera if your opponent isn't looking, and maybe like switch it. I mean, we've heard of rumors where like one person has had like all their whatever side deck card you could possibly have like on the side of their camera away from it, and then just shuffle it in whenever they needed to. Like many different creative ways that you could probably never ever get away with if you played like in real life tournaments.
Yeah, like that's always going to be a for sure thing. Like Remote Duel always has that possibility, so there's always going to be a higher opportunity to find cheaters in Remote Duel than there is in real life, because they just have so many more opportunities to cheat, so many more avenues that just don't exist when the cards are right in front of you. But I mean, it is what it is. We had to just make do with what we've had. So yeah.
Yeah, and fair enough. I mean, it's definitely been different for a lot of us, but I'm sure that you, I, and among many others are so excited to get back to in real life dueling, and that's practically in your backyard. I mean, I'm assuming you don't have to travel that far to go to Pasadena when it comes time.
Yeah, it's a clean 15 minutes. I'm already hosting a couple people. This is Pasadena is very much home. Like it is, and it would make sense that the first event is in California. The Konami's headquarters is in California. They get
Yeah.
to regulate it as much as they want, and having a European one right after, like, part of me missed the idea of traveling, like, because it was so funny because everyone kept talking about how we were so excited to travel again, and like I knew that it was going to be YCS Pasadena first. I'm like, I guess that counts, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm just still here.
Yeah.
But then they announced Utrecht the week after, and I'm like, okay, I guess I get to do that too, and I get to save a lot of money because everyone else has to fly here and then fly there. I only had to fly once.
Yeah, well, think of it this way: this could be like a nice little warm up for yourself to kind of get back in the swing of things. So, considering Pasadena is your backyard, and then the next week you can finally prep yourself and travel all the way over to Utrecht, which is going to be a lot of fun, because that's where like I'm sure everybody who's like all the big name players who like really want to get traveling again can like finally go like across the pond and finally get to play in Europe again, which I'm sure a lot of us have been starved for, wanting to travel and go play these events. So I'm sure that you have a very similar feeling.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I told myself, like midway through COVID and everything, like I took traveling for granted. I told myself a long time ago that I'd never go back to Europe because partly due to my fault, I picked some like flights that aren't as great as they should be. But I always just have hiccups on the way there, and the travel is often just terrible for me. And just going from the west coast of Europe is not that great to begin with. But like I had just so many awful Euro trips that I told myself I wouldn't go back. But I could never miss an event anymore. After like 2 years of just not being able to, I would just
Mhm.
go to anything.
Yeah, because you were also part of that YCS Rio trip where it basically got pulled out from under you when the whole pandemic started, and then you went there for the YCS, and all of a sudden you couldn't go anymore, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it's so funny because we registered that Friday. Like we had been in the room, in the venue. Everyone was there. We were pre-registering. I got the mat. I got like all the stuff that you got for being at that event.
Mhm.
And then they told us Friday night, oh yeah, it's not happening anymore.
Oh, wow.
So it was this weird feeling. Like I saw a lot, like the looks on a lot of my friends' faces, and some of the players that were there, like they weren't even really excited to play the event. Like my friend Gallo Orbea, he was there supposed to be his last event, his last hurrah, because he had not been really playing seriously for a while. He was just going to with all his friends because he had been doing it for so long.
Mhm.
But he looked the most depressed that the event was canceled,
Yeah.
like out of all of us. And I wonder, like, I'm sure he's going to be at Pasadena or like the next event too, just to like get that bag, like the one event that he didn't get to have, like his last hurrah. Maybe I don't know. Who knows if it's ever going to be his last hurrah with a lot of people that play Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like you tell yourself you're done, but you're never really done. It's so hard to get out.
Yeah, and this pandemic has really put a strain on a lot of us because so many of us like to travel for events. Being a Canadian myself, I'm like not too far from Jesse Cotton, where you're really good friends and teammates with. I always have to travel to the states, the northeastern end of states for me to play in a lot of events, and having that kind of pulled out from under the rug, it really is a big hit to me. And not to mention, I also have a lot of family in the states as well, so not being able to go across the borders, like it really hit me hard because that was part of my life, part of my experience, and having that taken away is it really takes a big chunk out of you. And I'm guessing you feel the same way as well when you couldn't have that, when you had the travel ban placed on you.
Yeah, like I didn't really know how much it would affect me until a couple months in that I realized I had spent so much of the last like 2 years just flying every single weekend. I was just traveling so often
Mm-hmm.
that after doing it for like months of just nothing, right? Like I was just stuck at home doing whatever, trying to live the life of like people that don't live like I do, and I just felt so empty. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just seems like it was so much of who I was that I didn't have any identity without it,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know what to do. I just had nothing going on, and like I just had to find other hobbies. I had to just find the like I ended up just watching like a lot of TV to kill time. Like
Yeah.
I didn't feel great. Like
Yeah, we all had to get creative during the pandemic because in this generation anyway, we never really went through anything like this before. Being on lockdown, having everything closed, and not being able to do a lot of what we wanted to. I started this podcast during the pandemic as well, so you can see it's kind of had. There's some positive effects that have it, but mostly negative for sure. That we all can't go around and travel and play and do other hobbies that I would have to do when you're like going out interacting with people. Like I also love playing sports as well. Like I don't know what your other hobbies would be, but I'm sure that you would also like enjoy going out, hanging out with friends, going out on the night or something like that as well, which you can't even do anymore because of this whole pandemic.
right, yeah, like very early on, you couldn't really do much of anything. Like California was kind of lax about it. I think we had like complete lockdown for only a few weeks,
Mhm.
and then it was just it got lighter and lighter, and then eventually we started seeing friends again. We would try to go out for movies, or like not like really movies, but we'd like go to rooms and like try to watch things when they would come out, when they were available, because obviously movie theaters were closed at the time. And then we would just make whatever possible happen, right? Like any opportunity to see each other, any opportunity to kind of just do something, we would really just jump at.
Mhm.
And that's just been kind of like scaling up since then. So now I definitely go out more frequently on weekends or whatever, not counting travel
Yeah.
now than I did before. Like I would definitely have more nights out now because I appreciate it a lot more having been in a situation where we couldn't do anything.
And that's a really good point to take into consideration. And now that like people kind of start to appreciate the time a little bit more now, because I remember I've had one of my friends told me, that I've invited him out to so many things, and he's had to, turn me down for it. And I remember at the height of the pandemic, he messaged me and said, I really wish I would said yes to more of the stuff you invited me out to, because now we're in the middle of a lockdown and who knows how long it's going to be. So I'm sure that's definitely a feeling we all have. And when I heard the announcement, I'm sure everyone else heard the announcement of Pasadena being announced. Like there was a large, positive uproar or cheer rather, that we get to go back to in real life playing again. And I know that so many big names are going to head out to California to play this event. So I can only imagine what the numbers could be, because we've seen the numbers be huge in California for events. And I know your regionals are just astonishingly huge as well. I think it's like you're in the thousands almost, if I recall.
Yeah, we've had multiple regionals that have had over 1,000 people. I don't think we've ever reached like anything higher than 1,500 for regionals. But like our YCS, we had Long Beach, which held the record. I don't even remember the exact number. Like some people say it was like 3,000, some people they say it was 7,000. I think it was like 3,000 people that actually played and 7,000 people that entered for the mats and stuff. But we do definitely hit crazy numbers. We can just hold all the people. California is definitely like a destination to go to. It's a very cool place for like vacations and stuff. And I'm actually really worried about how turnout's going to be, because for registration they opened or they mentioned pre-registration, and in the FAQ for it, it seems like there is a cap of around 2,000 players, and I think this event will have no problem hitting that cap. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be an issue of how many people will not get in, or if it's like a soft cap where if they hit the 2,000, they're like, okay, we're gonna pause registration for a little bit, book another room in the venue, like just get another hall, so they can increase the cap and go from there. So I'm not really sure how they're gonna go about it, but I'm really hoping it's the latter, so that they can fit as many people as possible. Because I know a lot of people will want to come out here and play this event. I know a lot of people that are already booking flights, especially like from outside the country, even like a lot of international people. Like people, if we're going to Utrecht, they're still definitely coming here because European players, they are so serious about the game, and they have very little opportunity to actually play in these tournaments. Like Europe only gets like 4 YCS a year compared to North America's like 10. So when they see an opportunity to go play, because like when they only had 4 to begin with and they had none for so long, they are just itching, right? Like they're there. A lot of them are definitely going to come here, especially the more competitive European players. And it would be really unfortunate if they weren't able to pre-register and they be here, like have their flights booked, and they just couldn't play the tournament. And I don't really think Konami is going to let that happen, but I guess it's more dependent on the COVID situation and making sure everyone is staying safe. They're staying in, solid parameters to make sure that it is a safe event for everyone, because it is like vaccine mandated. So I know they're trying to take an effort to make sure that it's safe and clean. But I mean, EDC just happened a week ago, and that had like 200,000 people. So I'm sure we can have a Yu-Gi-Oh event.
Yeah, not to mention, stadiums are starting to fill back up too, and that's you're holding up to like tens and 20,000s of people. Like I know like Staples Centers is like well over into the 10,000s. So I'm a big Los Angeles Kings fan, so I'm aware of how many people are there, and of course like the NBA just opened up as well. So now you're expecting the Lakers to have a lot of people there as well, and the Clippers. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to be opened up. So let's hope for that. This kind of event, which is an international event, like won't be too much of a problem now that a lot of people are starting to get vaccinated a little bit, so that the virus can't spread as much, but can still pose a bit of a threat. So it's also really curious to see what kind of measures they're going to take to keep everybody safe for this event, because we've never had an event where like a whole bunch of us had to have masks and we've had to worry about the pandemic up until this point in time.
Yeah, like I'm kind of worried about how people are going to react to the situation. Like I know people just don't like wearing masks to begin with, but I'm hoping that's like going to be the least of everyone's worries. They're just going to be happy to be there. I hope that's a reason enough to all of them to wear their masks. But there's going to be the people that are very upset about having to need vaccines, because I mean, there are people out there that just don't want to get them.
Yep.
And I've heard of people getting fake vaccination cards, and like that's just very illegal. So
Yes,
if they're going
quite.
to try to come to the event with fake vaccination cards, that's like just going to be so dumb. And I don't know what's going to happen, because I don't know how enforced it's going to be. Like, how much effort are they putting in to make sure everyone in the room is vaccinated? Like, I guess we'll just have to wait and see how they are handling it.
Yeah, that also could like cause a little bit of delay in the tournament as well, because that's an extra layer of screening that you have to do with the players, is that you have to make sure each and every single player is vaccinated. So I got to wonder how heavy or how light they're going to be with the security and screening when it comes to that, because we already know that these kinds of events already take long enough as it is to kind of get through, register so many players, get them through the system. And then if there's any late stragglers that come in, that's going to delay the tournament even more. So I'm really curious to see that if they do this screening process, how long is it going to take for them to get it all done and finally get the tournament started? And then, how late are the players going to be there before they finish off the first day?
So it seems like their solution to that is they're doing a mandatory check-in on Friday. On the FAQ, the Friday is actually extended. So instead of the usual pre-registering day from Friday from like 3 p.m. to like 7 p.m., it is from 8 a.m. Until a certain point where everyone that pre-registers has to check in. And I assume they're going to take that time to also make sure everyone is vaccinated. So they're just going to take use of having the venue on Friday to deal with that issue and make sure they're dealing with that before they actually have to do anything with the tournament. So like they have to check their vaccine cards, do everything, get people that pre-registered actually signed up into the tournament, and then Saturday and Sunday should probably go as normal, hopefully.
Do you think that's going to be a bit of a hindrance for a lot of people? Not because that they don't want to get the vaccine, but rather I know so many players that they can't get in on the Friday. Some people get in on like very early Saturday morning to play events because they they can't get the Friday off, or they get off maybe, well, they got to work at least and then can drive there or fly there afterwards. Do you think that there's going to be like a slight take back in numbers because of that?
So I definitely think it's going to hinder a lot of people, but I also think there are more people that are willing to travel right now, especially because a lot of people had a lot more downtime. People have had just more money because they haven't had things to spend it on, and people just had so much free time, right? So I think there is a much more demand to go to this YCS than an average YCS. So I think the numbers will still reach those cap numbers, but there would definitely be people that can't go because of the restriction of being there on Friday. But I just think there's going to be more people that are trying to go than normal anyway.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that part. And I'm sure that once we get that first announcement, and then I've seen all throughout the internet today that people are so excited. All like the big names, all the content creators, like pretty much everybody who's like a part of the game and takes it seriously and like likes to travel has been saying, yeah, we got to go to Pasadena now. Like we're got to go there in January. Like this is kind of hopefully like a brand new fresh start of 2022 that we finally get in real life events. Let's just cross our fingers and hope that nothing gets ruined before that and we can actually have this event.
Yeah, I know they've been waiting to announce this event for a long time, because at some point there was a leak of well, not so much a leak, but people were just looking at the Pasadena Convention Center, and like on their page it was eventually listed that the event was going to happen, and people freaked out because basically they found out there was going to be an in-person YCS, and this was something that obviously Konami wasn't ready to tell people about because it wasn't on their official page yet on the Yugioh card.com. And they were it seems like the Pasadena Convention Center was asked to take it down, and a lot of people interpreted that as the event was canceled or it was fake or whatever. Which I don't understand what people's first opinion of that was. I thought it was pretty obvious. They asked them to take it down because they weren't ready to make that an official announcement, because obviously they don't want people booking if they don't, people aren't ready to go. But I think them putting it on the official Yugioh page is them being pretty certain that they are going to have it, because I don't think that, now this is not me knowing anything exactly from them, because obviously I'm not a Konami employee. I don't know what they're doing for certain, but if they made the decision to put it on the page, it would cause such a backlash for them to remove it from the page after that or cancel it again. Like I think they would avoid that at all costs. For them to have the confidence to put it on the page, I think they are very certain that it will happen.
Yeah, because this is the kind of news that you want to keep an embargo on until like you're fully confident that this news will be come out. Because I've seen, I don't know what event it was, but I've seen an event where like the convention center has like posted that event, but not Konami hasn't. So we've had people kind of like had leaks and react to it, and it's been taken down before. I think it was like a Chicago event, but I don't quote me. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, definitely for sure that you want to make sure that this is something that is real, is legitimate, because it's because a lot of people could be booking, and they could be booking like non-refundable trips, non-refundable like hotels and whatnot. And then when they find out it's not happening, well, that's a whole ton of money that's out the window, because once this announcement got out, so many people I heard were booking their flights, booking their hotels. Like they wanted to go to this. It's as if like there's like a huge like Comic-Con happening at like San Diego or something like that. People are booking immediately for that. And this is kind of something similar, maybe to a bit of a lesser degree, but along those lines anyway, that people are making a lot of travel plans once they get a whisper of that news.
Yeah, because I mean, it is just something a lot of people are looking forward to. Like, obviously, me, I'm very involved in the lifestyle. It's something I've been waiting for a very long time. But even if you're just barely involved in the game, but you like to play, you do play in tournaments. I think this, like, YCSs are the biggest attraction that like Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments really have. It's the one that's open to everyone, but it still has like the highest value as far as like trophy goes. Like a YCS win counts for a lot as far as like general pride in Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments go. Like it
Mm-hmm.
matters more than most other wins in the game, and like the significance of the event itself, it just attracts so many people that play the game. So after not having a real one in like 2 years outside of like the remote duel one, I think just any news of it is enough to get the entire community excited.
Mm-hmm. Just make a fun prediction with me here. Do you think this could potentially be like the biggest YCS in terms of attendance that we've ever had before?
If it's not capped, then yeah, like I think it could
Yeah.
potentially hit those Long Beach numbers, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, I don't know if Pasadena can even hold Long Beach numbers people.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be kind of an iffy one. I also just think there are a decent amount of people that even if they are extremely excited about playing a YCS, they don't really want to go to a venue with that many people because people are still scared of COVID, rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know a lot of people that have been lost and everything, so not everyone is ready to just go to a venue with that many people, and they might not, even if it is all vaccinated, it's still not like the safest thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are still deterrents to keep it away from those Long Beach numbers, but it's definitely possible. Like there are enough people excited about it to really hit record numbers here.
Mm-hmm. Now, just no, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're from Los Angeles area, so, and I've only been there like 3 times so far, but I'm pretty sure that there's a convention center that's beside Staples Center, like, in downtown Los Angeles, and that's where all the Los Angeles regionals are held, if I recall correctly.
Yep, Los Angeles Convention Center.
Yep. So, and like, how, and is that the place where you would typically you could see like at least like 1,000 people at a regional?
Yeah, so it's either the convention center in Los Angeles or the convention center in Anaheim by Disneyland. Those are the most popular regional areas in SoCal. And those are the ones that have typically hit the 1,000 before. Like San Diego regionals never hit those numbers. Pasadena has never hit those numbers. Pasadena regionals are actually a fairly new concept. They haven't been around for very long. Traditionally, it's always been Anaheim and LA, and that's like anyone that's been part of the Southern California like Yugioh scene for a very long time. They know that those are the ones you look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Anaheim has like a special place in like everyone's heart. That's always been like the SoCal regional.
Okay, good. Okay, fair enough. Because I know that funny enough, well, one time I did go to LA. I didn't bring my Yu-Gi-Oh cards with me because my best friend no longer plays anymore. So we were going there for hockey, and we were going there for fun. And there was actually a regionals like next, like happening on the day that I was there. I'm like, man, I should have brought my Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I could have played for the day. So funny little anecdote there. But I know that the numbers there can be really huge. I'm just curious to see how the numbers are going to be for Pasadena as opposed to where it's been in like Long Beach, and even like way back then there was a Shonen Jump Championship at Costa Mesa that also hit record numbers at the time when that event happened. So we have like proof and evidence that California can really bring out like the biggest numbers, and especially for this being like a returning event, and since the Konami headquarters are located in El Segundo, which is like attached to the hip to Los Angeles, we could be up for possibly one of the biggest events, as you said, if there's no cap.
Yeah, I feel like if they were prepared to have a record-breaking YCS, I don't know if they would have gone for Pasadena. Every Los Angeles YCS recently has been Pasadena just because it's been like that new venue, and the current OTS that's running the tournaments is located in Pasadena, so it's local to them, and that's obviously more convenient to them. I feel like if they wanted to hit those record numbers, they would probably go for Los Angeles or Anaheim, given those are probably more expensive venues, but they definitely have way more space than Pasadena does.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if they even can hit those numbers.
Yeah, my only thought process for why it wouldn't be in Los Angeles, it's just boils down to money in that sense, because I'm sure
Mhm.
that renting out the Los Angeles Convention Center would be like a stupidly expensive as opposed to doing it in Pasadena, where it's a little bit farther out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why. And I know you've come up to some Canadian YCS as well. You've come up to Niagara Falls. I know I've seen you there before, and we used to have those in Toronto, if you recall, because I think you were part of those too. And then they got moved to Niagara Falls, which even though it's a tourist attraction city, like everybody in North America knows, I think it's a little bit cheaper in Niagara Falls than it is Toronto. I'm not 100% sure. That's just my guess, but I'm pretty sure we're kind of following like the same logic here for Pasadena when it comes to Los Angeles. Because again, like Pasadena and Los Angeles are, again, they're not too far off. It's just Pasadena's just like north of Los Angeles, so it's pretty much LA if you want to consider it that.
Yeah, like I mean, it's still it technically is part of Los Angeles County. Los Angeles County is huge,
Yeah.
so a lot of everything in that is considered part of LA.
Mhm.
But yeah, they have made a lot of cutbacks as far as like venues go, and the trade-off was they gave us more events. Like we had more YCSs now because they got cheaper venues, and they go to like cities that aren't as popular, like Utah or whatever, where the venue has to be a lot cheaper, right? But we get to have a YCS there. We get that additional YCS, and I think that's worth it every time.
Mhm.
It's funny you mentioned Toronto because I was in school during the time when like I was started traveling, and YCS Toronto was always just in that time period where school was starting up again,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't make the time for it. Like I could never actually go to a Toronto. By the time I traveled to Canada for a YCS, it was Niagara. I had never been to a YCS Toronto, so I'm
Okay.
very sad
Got
about it.
it. Fair enough, yeah, because it's always like the city to go visit if you're American and you're coming to Canada. Like Toronto's like one of the top two cities that you got to go visit. The other one being Vancouver, or you could argue Montreal. Vancouver, I believe, where MSTTV lives. So that's pretty big city in itself. So yeah, and those are the cities you want to visit, as opposed to you coming down to the States, like one of the biggest cities in the world, sorry, in America, Los Angeles, other one being New York City. So those are definitely the two cities you want to go visit when you're doing a YCS or whatnot. So Pasadena is still a pretty good substitute for being Los Angeles, even though it's considered part of it anyway. So I'm excited that you get to to relax, take it easy for the first YCS, and then finally hop off to Utrecht the next week, and you get two real life events consecutively, and hopefully you can do well at both of them.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to just go out and like try to compete in those. It's
Mhm.
weird because anyone that is running both of those events are running a special kind of gauntlet. Like normally back-to-back events, especially in like one in different country, is usually a gauntlet anyway. But the way the Forbidden Unlimited list is set right now, it's a
Mhm.
no sooner than date that is directly after Pasadena.
Mhm.
So in theory, they could have two completely separate formats just a week apart.
Yeah, and we've seen that every single event it's either like a different list or a new set comes into play, where the last tournament is going to be completely different from the tournament prior to it. So it's like every single event is going to be completely different, and we could possibly see that come Pasadena and Utrecht. It's definitely something that I would take into consideration if I were going to these events. But it seems to be a common theme now that every single major event now is going to be different in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and like honestly, that's something that excites me. Like I don't consider that a problem. I think that's
Mhm.
actually just really cool, and I would
Mhm.
enjoy preparing for them in different ways. Especially since like if we happen to do well in Pasadena, then like people can't just use the same thing that we did, and like we don't have to like specifically try to like hold back or try to beat the thing that we just made for one event. Or if we just have new information for the other one, right? Like
Mhm.
I think constantly having this puzzle to solve is really cool. And I like open formats a little bit more for that reason. I know Jesse seems to like solid formats a little bit more than I do. But
Mhm.
I think when like these formats are brand new, there's so much opportunity to like experiment and solve things. And I think it really
Mhm.
rewards the people that are good at that kind of thing. And I
Mhm.
think that's often the better players are better at like navigating new scenarios or just being more creative and understanding what is good out the gate.
Yeah, because there's a different line of like research that you have to follow now, since you're kind of playing in a different format. Like you can't just lay back at the last format, sorry, the last tournament rather, and then just play off that and go into this one. Like, because when a new set comes in, now you have to start like, taking into consideration like what impact that new set can have, and and you might get a little more creative and kind of see what could happen. Like for example, when I played like Striker or Custs, I did great at that one regional, and then the next regional I kind of went with like Scrap Striker or Crust, but then I didn't take into account Magician Souls, which was just newly released at the time, and then people were starting to run like Spiral or Crust as well. That was starting to be a new variant that I was not prepared for whatsoever. So it's we can see that like one card can completely make like the shape or like change or make like a complete difference in how the meta goes, and this is what we could potentially see here at Utrecht and Pasadena.
Yeah, Souls is definitely a really powerful card, and it's interesting because Pasadena is different than the Remote Duel YCS that was happening in December. Even though they're in the same ban list, there is a set being released. I want to say either the week of or the weekend before Pasadena, and that is like Grand Creators, which is having a huge impact in the OCG with one of the archetypes giving you this really like compact engine that lets you get out a useful negate like at the beginning of your turn, which can be useful for a lot of decks and can create a pretty big difference between Pasadena and the Remote Duel one. And then going from that to a ban list to potentially like dealing with that in Utrecht. So it's a lot for people to try to work around. Like the people that are only doing one or the other, like they definitely have a much easier time because they get to focus on one. But the people that are trying to do both, they're going to have a lot of work to do because they'll hopefully get that information pretty early. Like I imagine if they're going to actually release a ban list between those YCSs, then they would announce it or like they would release it rather 2 weeks or a week before Pasadena so that people have the time to practice with it, but it won't be in effect until the day after Pasadena.
Yeah, so that's yep. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say like yeah, people will have the time to work on it, but like if they're doing both, it's weird to split the work and like which one are they gonna prioritize? How are they gonna go about it? It's definitely a large task.
Yeah, because you have to prepare for what. Let's assume that you're playing both weekends because you have to pretty much prepare for one format, and then 1 week later you've got to compare it for what could be a completely different format. So it really depends on your flexibility, your adaptability, and the research that you have to take into if you want to have success at both of these events. And I think that's really going to be put on display, assuming that these two events are going to be different formats, or at least like a new set's going to take place, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, like I mean, it's a lot of effort, and I think the people that are willing to put in the effort, like because it's the people that are going to complain about it that don't really want to do it. But for some people, like our group of friends, I think we get really excited at a challenge like that, and like just knowing that the events are different, it's more of something to take advantage of rather than something as a hindrance. So it's going to be fun to see who does well at those events. Hopefully it's us, but it could easily be another group of people that find something really exciting that that they could take advantage of.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to be trying to be that group that finds something that is good for both of those events.
Yeah. So this has been a common discussion that I've had with like past guests, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. So if I were to, let's say had some good success with one deck for, let's say, a major tournament like a YCS or something like that, and then there was a YCS maybe like next month or a couple weeks after, you think that would it be foolish, or do you think it'd be fine if I just stuck with that very same deck that I had that last tournament going into the next tournament afterwards?
I think there's a lot of things that you have to take into account. Like, I don't think it's going to be a simple yes or no because there's a lot of other factors. Well, you generally speaking, I don't think it's correct to play card for card the exact same list because the cards that you played for one event were likely built in a way to counter the event that happened before. Because you're usually, when you submit a deck list for an event, you're countering something. You're trying to build to beat something. And you would assume that after that event is over, the thing that you're trying to beat has changed. Like the game has advanced in some way. There's some new knowledge where you can't necessarily play the exact same card for card list. And as long as you make those adjustments, if your deck choice is still solid, then it's perfectly reasonable to play the same deck for the next one, as long as you made the adjustments to make it still effective. Like we played Thunder Dragon for pretty much a year, and like it was almost always the same list. It was just a couple engines changed, the side deck changed very frequently. Sometimes the extra exchange with new cards or whatever,
Mhm.
but we still felt like Thunder Dragon was the correct choice for all of 2019, and we did really well with the deck. And the
Mhm.
only thing that was really going to change that is if Thunder Dragon got more popular, because the mirror wasn't that good, especially like later on when Hieratic Seal came out, because that really made the mirror really hard to deal with. Like you couldn't really play into your opponent's board. But because the mirror wasn't popular, you got to bully all the other decks. So and people constantly made the decision to not play the deck. So uh, our reason to keep playing it remained the same.
Mhm.
And I think as long as that kind of situation is there, where like the reason to play the deck is still there, you're able to go. But if everyone is trying to counter your deck from one deck moving into the other one, then it's not necessarily the safest decision to play that same deck. And those are the kind of factors you have to look into before you make that choice of
Mhm.
what deck you're going to play from one event to another.
Mhm. And could you take that same logic and apply it to a deck that was not affected by like the forbidden list at all? So like if a new list came out and my deck didn't get hit and I was having success with it, would you say that it would be smart to change it or smart to keep it the way it is? Or this may not be a yes or no question, but what would be your opinion on changing a deck if it wasn't affected by the ban list at all?
I mean, you have very good reason to keep playing it, right? Because it wasn't actually affected. All the other decks got worse, and if your deck was playable before and you did well with it, then in theory, it should be still very strong.
Mhm.
But the other factors that you have to pay attention to is why did your deck do well previously? Did it have
Mhm.
something to do with its matchups? Like if your good matchups got hit by the ban list and your worst matchups got better because of it, is your deck still a good choice? Like that's a
Mhm.
something that actually you do see very often. Like let's say when Tri-Brigade and Prankets got hit, Dragon was a particularly good matchup against those,
Mhm.
and it made certain cards really strong. When those decks got hit, Drytron got a little bit better, and then Dragon's matchup against Drytron is really bad, so Dragon gets like a little bit worse. So some of the considerations you can like take into account, and it really
Mhm.
just depends on what people play and like the reads you can tell about what everyone else in the room is going to do.
Mhm.
But there are going to be factors. I don't think everything is ever going to be so black or white as like you can just say it'll always remain a good choice or not.
Mhm.
There's going to be a bunch of factors every time.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And that's what I was figuring was going to be the case because you see so many people where if they get like a new list and their deck isn't affected, it's like, well, looks like I'm not changing my deck, looks like I'm still playing the same. And I see that every so often, but you always have to consider what's going to go up, what's going to go down, and like how do you adjust your deck to that, because I don't think for the past little while that I've run the same deck before at one event for another event like a month later, because things change, you have to adapt a little bit more. And then if you're working some tech and then that certain tech might be a little bit more public knowledge, for example, like let's say when like Dragon Rulers, when they were out for the first time, like Vanity's Emptiness was the thing. And then when people knew about Vanity's Emptiness, then we start, okay, now we got to start checking, make maybe some more spell trap removal, because we know that Vanity's Emptiness is now a factor in the thing. And that's kind of something you can take into account now with current decks. For example, I can't think of any examples right off the top of my head, but it's that kind of logic that you kind of have to follow, where maybe not sticking with the same deck could be the same, could be yielding the right choice, just because things change, metas change, people's tech choices change. So there's so many factors that you have to consider, as you mentioned, and I think that's really a big asset when it comes to deck building, which you and your Duelist Academy team are quite well at doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of instances like that where cards like Nibiru can get more popular depending on what decks have been doing well. Like there's a lot of cyclical cards like that. Rivalry is like the most recent one where it hasn't seen play in almost like just years, right? But it
Mhm.
became very very strong because it was so good playing into Tri Brigade and Prank Kids, which were some of the better decks for a good period of time. And it was one of those cards that was really strong in stopping them either when you were going first or just playing into their board. It was able to just cut off a lot of things. And when a card like that is so powerful and seeing Horizon play, like decks that can take advantage of it,
Mhm.
became that much stronger in the format. I think that's where Dragon really found its niche in the meta previously. When those decks got worse, that card got worse, and so on and so forth. Very
Mhm.
similar thing with Nibiru. Nibiru was obviously such a huge bomb to the entire meta when it was released. Certain decks became unplayable until people found ways to kind of just either play through it or play around it.
Mhm.
And it became this thing where while Nibiru was so deeply feared, people just didn't play decks that were going to be hurt by Nibiru that much, which
Mhm.
caused people to just take Nibiru out of their decks, move it to their side, or just not play it at all. And then like they were rewarded for not playing it at all for one event, and then people started playing the combo deck again. And
Mhm.
then because people didn't play Nibiru, the combo deck just got to go off completely and destroy all the other decks that just cannot provide the kind of responses necessary to stop a combo deck from just overwhelming them and just running through them.
Mhm.
And then it'll just cycle from there. Nibiru will get popular again, and the combo deck will get less popular. And those are the kind of things we see all the time in the game. And there's just so
Mhm.
many times where that's the situation you're really looking for, and you just want to be on the right side of the curve, just a little bit ahead, so you can catch the wave before everyone else does.
Yeah, because we've seen a carousel of hand traps go in and out of so many different formats. Like, like let's say, for example, last format when, Drytrons and tri-brigades were like kind of the top decks, you'd see like Droll and Lockbird for Drytrons. And then like Ghost Bell would be a good card for both matchups. And we kind of see Ash Blossom maybe not as impactful, but still making an appearance. And, other ones like Ghost Ogre, we haven't seen that be used in a while. But Nibiru would be there, and we've seen this whole like mix of hand traps go kind of in and out. Some can be good in a certain format, some can be terrible in another format, and it's really that's I think that's one of the most clearest examples of how we've had to like shift ourselves like back and forth with determining what cards are good or not in whatever format we play in.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it goes back into your earlier question with how your deck list probably should be changing from event to event, because
Mm-hmm.
so many deck lists now are just so hand trap centric, right? You
Mm-hmm.
play so many of these cards dedicated to stopping what your opponent is doing, and you have to imagine that like the decks that you're playing against or like the strategies have somewhat changed between one event and another. Those like slots have to change to better counter what decks you expect to see. Because I don't think you're going to expect to see the same exact thing that you were expecting from one event into the next one, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
game generally changes more than that. So those are slots that always have to change, which is why you really shouldn't be going from one event to another like that. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people where they're not really thinking about that. They're just thinking, oh, here's another event that I can play. Or they're like, I like playing this deck. It was fun. This worked well for me before. And they really didn't
Mm-hmm.
put in the thought of why it worked well for me, what decisions were really making the difference there. And they just get punished, right? Like when they're having Ash Blossom in their deck, when the format is mostly Tri-Brigade, and Ash Blossom is just not very good against Tri-Brigade.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's finding that ground, finding the answer that you need to solve, like, or
Mm-hmm.
you understand what I mean.
Yep,
it's
of course.
it's just it's one of those things that you have to constantly be asking yourself.
Mhm. Fair enough, it is, and that's what you guys do really well. Because I know that because you do a lot of deck doctors with your clients with the Duelist Academy and whatnot. So that's pretty much what your job is. So when you help these guys out, it kind of helps you out in figuring out, toggling between like hand traps like and meta and like numbers. Because I know like math is a very big part of deck building nowadays and like determining probability. And I'm sure you guys like work at this on a constant regular basis to kind of tinker and figure out what cards and what amounts of cards are best for the meta and for what deck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we are some of the people that advocate for things that are kind of taboo in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh, which is going over 40. I know
Mm-hmm.
back in like the Hoban era of like 2013 and on, he popularized the three Upstart Goblin strategy, which I mean had been used previously way well before him,
Yep.
but it really just put up there that the concept of you want to play the least amount of cards in your deck to, gravitate towards the better ones. And the main reason I think that's changed is
Mm-hmm.
the simple number of good cards you can play now. Like
Mm-hmm.
up until that point, you had to make a choice. Like the concept of staples still existed, right? Your Heavy Storm, your Dark Hole, your MST, Bottomless Baby, like those kind of cards that you splash into every deck, just because they were good enough and they were always able to like have positive like outcomes every time you got to resolve them.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of cards don't really exist anymore outside of like hand traps, maybe some like, just strictly going second tools,
Mm-hmm.
because there are just too many good cards now. There is no shortage of good cards that you can play in your deck. You could play 60 good cards and it would be a fully functional deck.
Mhm.
So I think the reason to go down to 40 is a lot less prominent now. But there are decks that definitely want to. There are decks that thrive on 2-card combos with 2 very specific cards, and those decks should absolutely play 40 cards or play like upstarts if it could.
Yeah.
Um, but the alternative is like some of these big heavy combo decks where a lot of the cards do the same thing. Like let's take for example the Goki deck, right? All it needed was 2 warriors. 2 warriors did exactly everything it needed, and there were a lot of ways to get to 2 warriors, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So it was more so about finding the room in between to answer whatever the rest of the format was. So you can make space for however many going second tools or random board breaking tools, or even just more going first tools to make sure the rest of your combo resolved, or extenders or whatever.
Mhm.
And then you just keep adding in as many pieces that fulfill the requirement of 2 warriors to even out the ratio, so you still have the same rate of success,
Mhm.
which could easily account for with like a hypergeometric calculator. And that was something that was very commonly done for a very long period of time, as far as like finding out the appropriate numbers
Mhm.
for decks to, like, if you're going to go over 40, how do you keep the ratio the same? So like if at 40 the success rate was 85%, how many more extenders do you have to play at 45 to still have 85% or higher?
Mhm.
And you make up for the difference. And it
It-
got even more complicated with Drytron, where Drytron specifically made us do some things that I've never done before, where I learned how to code because there are combinations in Drytron that like work to fulfill a combo, but you
Mhm.
couldn't throw it in the hypergeometric calculator because like there are, let's say, 20 cards that get you to Drytron Alpha, and then like 20 cards to get you to Drytron Zeta, and like that's the most typical combo is Alpha
Yep.
Zeta.
Yep.
But like you can't just say, oh, I play 20 of this card. What are the chances of me opening 2 of them? Because they're not
Mhm.
all do the same thing. Like you can't open 2 Cyber Emergency. You can't open 2 Drytron Alpha. Like it doesn't do the
Mhm.
same thing.
Mhm.
So we're like, okay, how are you supposed to actually put these numbers in? And then you realized the math you had to do to get the exact number of the success rate for that was just
Mhm.
well beyond our pay grade. Like we're talking about like
Yeah.
actual mathematician stuff here.
Yep.
So the next best solution is using an actual hand simulator to just run through a bunch of hands with a given deck list, and then
Mhm.
actually give you an estimate of how often it would have a success.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the reason we went along with this idea is because someone else from Europe, actually a group of Europeans, had used this with the Dragon Link FTK, and they had used it to create this 99% FTK that would end up winning one of the local online tournaments, which proved, like it was a lot of work done. It did really well. I asked if I could use it. Like he made it public. I took it and I adjusted it for Drytron, and then we used that to create some of these Drytron strategies, which was almost never going to be a 40 card deck.
Mhm.
They were always a little bit bigger to accommodate for having tools to go second with, but also having more options to side. Because when your deck is like such a heavy combo deck, it's not really difficult to side because you're often taking out a combo to put in whatever you're siding.
Mhm.
So you're definitely making your deck less consistent post side, and that's not really something you want to do. So if you go over 40 and you're making your deck even more consistent by adding more engine, things like that. And when you side, you still can maintain a large success rate, especially if you're, going to have a sixth card, and then you get to play the extra defensive tools because you have the more space in your deck. And it really changed the way we build a lot of the decks because we can be a little bit more precise about
Mhm.
what a single card change can do. Because that was one of the cool things about the calculator that I made, which we still use to this day, is we could just change the deck list by one card and we see exactly how it affects it.
Oh wow.
So yeah, and that's definitely something that's going to be interesting to see how that evolves even more in the coming years.
Yeah, so there were like several decks that I would build that have over 40 cards because there were several cards that you never wanted to draw. Like for example, like the easy culprits right off the bat are, like Red Eyes Fusion, Dark Magician, Red Eyes Black Dragon, and then you could also argue like in the first build of Drytrons, you didn't want to draw like Dawn Knight as one of the cards. So like there are so many cards that I didn't want to draw that I would intentionally add like more cards that were like combo pieces that would help add some consistency and that would decrease my odds of having to draw some of these bad cards that you wouldn't want to draw, especially with Phantom Knights, for example, because that was one where there's so many starters with like Kagamusha Knight, the Psychic Tracker, and Emergency Teleport, and what the I can't another warrior. It's a junk warrior sort. No, junk. I forget.
Jump
Junk
forward.
forward. Junk forward. Yeah, would just be examples of cards that you would just keep adding in to increase the consistency, and not to mention like lower your chances of drawing those dead cards as well. So I think that was also a factor in my mind. I don't know if that was. I'm going to assume that's something that crossed your mind too, but be a reason why you would want to run more than 40 cards to help decrease the consistency of drawing the cards you don't want to draw.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely going to be cards in your deck, especially if they're like non-functional garnets, like when you draw them and it actually turns off your combo. Like
Yep.
back when, I mean, it's why the term is called a garnet, right? Popularized by Brilliant Fusion Garnet. If you
Yep.
drew the actual Gem Knight Garnet, you couldn't activate the Brilliant Fusion anymore.
Mhm.
So it was this concept of like, okay, you want to keep your deck at 40, but you also just cannot draw this card, and like the other card that goes with it is just so powerful when it resolves. How do you get the ratio right? And then that's when it became difference of like 40 versus not 40. It was just about the ratio, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is the success rate going to be where you can still get the same payoff, but like you lose some of the repercussions, right?
Mhm.
And that has been a big principle in how we build our decks. If we're gonna play decks with a good amount of garnets, then we have to increase the we have to increase the deck count, but maintain the ratio. So we get to this point where we are seeing the garnets so infrequently, but we are still having a large success rate. And
Mhm.
those are like the kind of decks that we kind of that we lean towards. I want to say
Mhm.
sometimes we definitely just play 40. Like I definitely been playing Dragon Link as a 40 card deck just because there's no real reason to go further, and some cards are definitely better than others. Like I think Chaos Base is significantly better than a lot of cards. Saferd's a lot better than a lot of cards. Like you could definitely play more Dragon Extenders. There's no shortage of Dragon Extenders out there,
Mhm.
but they get more watered down as you go down the list, and it doesn't necessarily do the same thing. So you kept the deck at 40 because of how individually powerful those cards were, and because Dragon itself doesn't really play that many Garnets, so you were okay with it. But with decks like Drytron, which has a much higher ratio of cards you don't want to see, playing
Mhm.
a little bit more cards can be beneficial. And it's not the only reason, right? There's often many more reasons to go over 40 if your deck can support it. So, I mean, yeah, I'm just a big fan of going over 40 when possible.
Yeah, and I think Drytrons is a really good example of what we're talking about, because when we saw the first incarnation of Drytrons, they could put out two monsters so easily, but they never ran Dragoon. And then when they came back, once Diviner of the Herald came out, we didn't see it in the early stages, but starting in the middle and the latter stages of that format, we started seeing people run the Dragoon package, but maybe add a couple more cards to the deck, because because Drytrons really need that two card combo. You need Alpha Zeta. Once you get that, you're going off with full combo, assuming you go uninterrupted. But now a lot of the players are starting to run the Dragoon package, because the format is so like heavy hand trapped, and because you breathe on it with a hand trap, it gets disrupted greatly. So that's kind of like their way of getting off with like a pretty solid board while being interrupted with Drytrons. It's kind of funny seeing that evolution of Dragoon kind of making its way into Drytrons where it wasn't there before, even though it kind of had very similar boards it ended off on.
Yeah, I mean, Drytron, like when we put Dragoon in the deck, it wasn't even about like dealing with. We were already playing more than 40 to begin with, but we
Mhm.
threw the Dragoon stuff in there was because it wasn't that we were losing to one hand trap. They would constantly have three.
Yeah.
And that's when things got difficult. Because Drytron inherently is really good at playing against hand traps, and that's why it attracted us in the first place, right? It was able to play through interruptions really well outside of like very specific bombs like Joel and Awkward.
Mhm.
And the previous iterations of Drytron, Triple Benten allowed you to navigate through hand traps a little bit better, and it was just a lot stronger at dealing with certain things.
Mhm.
And as far as Droll goes, it had a little bit more tools with Union Carrier or anything like that. You had a couple more tricks up your sleeve, right? But the newer version of Drytron, one of the things that you often found was because you have a dedicated normal summon in Diviner the Herald,
Mhm.
you very frequently had bodies left over in the field that did nothing. You had nothing to turn them into. And that was also a problem with previous version of Drytron with 3 Benton is you didn't have a dedicated normal summon, right? You didn't
Mhm.
really, or like, I mean, it was like an end board normal summon, right? Like if you want to do like a Vanities ruler or something.
Mhm.
But you didn't have a normal summon that was part of your actual combo, like a part of your steps as to getting to the end board. And if you were to get drolled, getting to two bodies was often very wasteful. You had to just kind of burn a Drytron name, just get a card out of your hand, and you would just hope to end on a Dragoon, and it would do something. The introduction of Blue Beta and Diviner did so much more for Drytron in that aspect, because there were just bodies on the board that were just sitting there doing nothing, because they were often the cards that were being negated. Like Mu Beta is almost always going to take an interruption if they have it. Like if they have an Imperm or a Veiler, they're going to use it on the Mu Beta. Same with Diviner. It will always just kind of force an interaction there. And then what do you do with the body, right? And it just came up that after getting hand trapped like 3 times a turn, you just have a couple bodies left over, because Drytron is, just really good at just putting some things through, right? Like, and cards like Diviner that are normal summons, they will trade well with a hand trap, because obviously you get to keep the body unless they gamma it or something. When we realized that people were often having multiple hand traps, but we still have these remaining bodies on the board, we started saying, okay, this was a problematic situation mainly against Sky Striker. Sky Striker was a deck that played 20 hand traps or so, and it was relevant for the very first Remote Duel YCS. Going into that format, Striker was very popular, and we said, okay, how do we get rid of this problem? And we decided to throw these 2 bodies into a Dragoon.
Yep.
And it almost immediately fixed the Striker issue. And then we found out it also just fixed every other deck, because Dragoon was broken.
Yes.
And it had no business doing what it did. And then we slowly realized the Striker matchup. And then we realized we weren't even taking it out going second anymore, because of how strong it was to just like, once they use their interruptions on everything else we have, we could just find a way to 2 bodies and like break their field with Dragoon, because again, Dragoon is a ridiculous card.
Yep.
To the point where we were almost never siding it out except for the mirror match, because Dragoon was never getting there in a combo heavy matchup like the mirror, where the only way they were stopping you from playing is if they're going to do an impactful hand trap like Droll or Cycle Reader of their own, in which case they still have 5 cards in hand after you pass turn, and Dragoon was never going to get there in that situation. Because if you were a Drytron player and you were up against a single Dragoon, you have no problem killing them. So we that was the reason we would side it out in that matchup. But versus everything else, Dragoon just became this crazy card, and we built our like game plan from there, kind of around it. Like, oh, I guess if we got Drolled, we can go into a Dragoon too. What else can we do? And then we left Draconids in there so we can end on Dragoon Draconids to be a little bit more flexible. And like that was our answer to the single most difficult problem that Drytron faced, which was Droll and Lockbird.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but at that point we had already been playing more than 40 cards, but we kind of just leaned into it, because like, okay, I guess we really just don't want to draw these cards too.
Yeah.
So we just kind of made up for the ratio, and like we started playing more cards to make sure that because we added the 3 bricks, that we increased our success rate by that number to still be above 85%.
Yeah, would you like also start seeing like the lesser played Drytron? I forget what is it. I forget what it's Beta. I think it is the one that takes a banished one and puts it back in the graveyard. Would you start considering playing that one as well when you had the Dragoon package out?
We did. We played 1 copy of Beta at the Remote YCS. Striker was popular, and it was not really necessary for its actual like put back effect, because like, I mean, if it comes up against the Shark Cannon, it's cool, or if like any random thing banish one of your names, which I mean, there were a lot of cards that banished at the time. It was something that could come up, but it was mainly just another name to trigger.
Yeah,
which was important because you need multiple names to do a lot of things in the deck, and we didn't want to add additional copies of Drytron Gamma per se, just because very specifically Gamma Ben 10 doesn't work. That's not an actual combo.
Yeah.
But every other Drytron name in Ben 10 does, simply because later in the combo you need to send a Gamma to the graveyard to resolve it, and then summon the Mu Beta. If you lead with Gamma, it doesn't work. So we identified that, and we're like, okay, Beta is at least just a name. It's a vanilla name, but it still does tribute summon. So that was good enough. And yeah, we didn't play it for following events simply because Striker fell out of popularity and it wasn't like that needed.
Yep.
But yeah, it's definitely playable.
Yeah, because I definitely found that it did have some like practical applications, just because like during that time Cycle Reader and DD Crow were starting to gain in popularity, because one well-timed Cycle Reader can completely shut down a huge Drytron play, and using that Beta can really at least help you get out of a jam, at least let you like extend a bit further. I found it's happened to me a couple times before when I was playing Drytrons, but yeah, definitely not like the best effect. But I did find it had its niche in some points in time, just because like Cycle Reader during like the latter part of Drytron last format was gaining in popularity as one of like the best hand traps to use after Droll and Lockbird.
Yeah, I mean, like I mean, that was a card people were gonna discover pretty quickly anyway. But like I
Yeah.
remember when Ryan Levine and I, when we found it looking for actually Halka Firebrax targets, it was
Yeah.
just a level 3 shooter. We like looked at it and we were like, oh, this card would actually be pretty crazy for Drytron, because the original concept for Drytron before any Forbidden List, it had Link Cross, and
Yeah.
you could do this crazy play where if you summoned Fiber, you could summon, let's say, a copy of Ciphering Gear Gamma from your deck, and then you do this this weird Auroradon play that would end on Tricking All Calamities, draw you a couple cards, and then you'd have Orange Ava in your hand.
Yep.
So your opponent just couldn't do anything, and that was like the very first iteration of the Drytron combo, right?
Yeah.
But because we were looking for fiber targets that couldn't be normal summoned, or like that were just simply machine, because we needed something to make a Auroradon, we found Cycle Reader, and like, oh, this card is actually probably really crazy against Drytron. And Ryan happened to buy 1,000 of them that day.
Nice.
And like, yeah, he came up nicely on that.
Yeah, really.
But so when we decided to play Drytron at like the first like online tournament, where it was legal, which had already banned Link Cross at this point, but it was still essentially the same deck. We just found out different ways to play it, and obviously 3 Ben 10 was ridiculous. We sided 3 Cycle Reader because we assumed other people had taken note of Drytron as well, and it was something we talked about a lot at the time. So I mean, maybe it was something we kept a little bit more hidden for a little bit. We could have gotten away with it for maybe one more event to deal with it, but because it's the very first event we played with it, we already had Cycle Readers in our side deck. It did, yeah. It was not, and everyone had Cycle Readers in their side decks for like the next couple events that Drytron was playable.
Yeah, and that was like the bane of my existence for like if I were to lose a lot of game 2s and game 3s, it would be mostly because of Cycle Reader, if not Droll and Lockbird, and that was really painful for me to have to get through. So yeah, the Dragoon really helped offset that when you couldn't go full combo, because I always assume that when I play game 2 and game 3, when I play Drytrons, I assume I'm never going to go full combo, so I'm just going to try to build whatever the best board that I can. And if I happen to full combo, awesome. But if not, I'm going to assume that I'm going to try to put myself in the best position possible, so that way, like when I get hit by a Droll or decisive or sorry Cycle Reader, that I can at least have like a pretty solid play to be able to get myself another turn without being able to without like being pinned to the corner. In other words.
Right, and that's really the goal with the deck post side, because after game 1, you really have to give a lot of respect to Cycle Reader, or like Droll mainly, but then Cycle Reader as well. Like usually in that order though, you need to prioritize Droll more often than Cycle Reader, because Cycle Reader is a little specific. Not a lot of people respect Drytron enough to have it in their side deck anymore. But like when you try to play around Droll, you're often choosing a path that lets you end on, let's say, Dragoon Dragons, or like giving yourself that line in any way possible, like, or at least a Dragoon, right? So choosing which cards you choose to use first, so that after you get drolled, you can still make that, and that's a big part of how you're meant to play Drytron. And I think Drytron is just such a hard deck to play. It is one of the most difficult decks to play well. I mean, sometimes you just have the combo, it goes uninterrupted, and woohoo, you won. But like, oftentimes your opponent's going to make it a lot more challenging for you to do it well, and you are often able to actually get very far if you understand the deck well enough to navigate through your opponent's interruptions.
That's kind of similar to a thing I always try to tell other players, is that everyone can always memorize like a first turn board or whatnot, but it's the real skill comes out in what comes out in the subsequent turns, and then what comes out in game 2 and game 3, because you're playing more with your side deck than you often aren't. Because you only play your main deck in game 1, and then you're always going to be siding for game 2 and then siding for game 3 as well. So there's always that like adaptability that you have to consider, and know that the game 1 isn't going to be the same as game 2 and game 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you're absolutely right. Game 2, like rather, side deck is at least 50% of the games that you play.
Mhm.
So not a lot of people really take enough effort into learning how to side deck properly. Like
Yeah.
there are a lot of steps, like even us when we're just feeling lazy and it's like event to event and we're still like making a new side deck like the Friday night of, and we were still working on our main deck for so long, so we just kind of like put together a side deck with what we think is good for the decks that we are expecting to see. But like there's so much more into actually building a side deck well, and it's just understanding what you can afford to take out and what you can afford to put in, and
Mhm.
then having your ratio set so like every matchup that you need to take these cards out, you have enough stuff to put in, like you have appropriate answers, like you dedicate more slots for the actual problematic situations and like less spots to the situations that you like. Even if it's a deck that's highly represented, if your deck can naturally deal with it, you shouldn't side that many cards for it because you're not going to
Mhm.
have that much of a problem. And like understanding those kind of rules when it comes to siding is, I think,
Mhm.
often not well understood.
Mhm.
And I think that really defines a lot of the better players are the ones that have learned how to side deck a lot better than the others.
Yeah, because I've had so many times where I've seen people like would net deck a certain deck, play it, and then they would go like, "How the heck did this deck like win or this deck top?" They would say it's terrible. Well, one thing I always say as well, you always have to consider like side decking is a huge skill and art in itself, especially in today's game where like you may not get more than 2 turns per game. So you really have to make sure that the side deck cards they're impact cards and they're cards that you can be able to use like practically right away, or at least if they have like a second turn that they have some kind of application or like game breaking effect that like is worth like the extra turn because because games are very short. While we may take
Hmm.
long doing them, the actual turn count itself is very short. So we have to make sure that there's excellent application of all these cards that we choose to side deck nowadays.
Yeah, definitely. I think people that side deck generic hand traps that are usually in the main, like Ash Blossoms and like Ghost Spells and stuff,
Mhm.
they're not really identifying the purpose of the side deck, because Ash and Bell are good when they're in your main deck because they're generic enough to hit a lot of decks.
Mhm.
But often when you're siding, you have near perfect information. You
Mhm.
should know who is starting, what the matchup is, like all that information is available to you, so
Mhm.
you can likely pick the best card for that exact situation. And that those are the kind of cards I'm looking for in the side
Mhm.
deck. And that's often not Ash Blossom, right? That's too low impact for it to deserve a spot in my side.
Yeah, and fair enough. Yeah, you really want those like the really high impact cards. Like I feel like Nibiru would be like an example of one of those cards that'd be like high impact. Something like Lightning Storm, for example, also could be another example of high impact card. Like you really want those game breaking cards now to be able to break those boards that I feel like are like side deck worthy in a sense. But that's my personal opinion on the matter. Could be different from yours, and I completely understand why. But that's just my feeling. I want every single card in my side deck to have like a major impact on the game when I play against my opponent, because like even if I draw a side deck card against the opponent and it does like minimal impact, it's like, okay, well, what is it in there for? If it just slows them down, I'd rather just like completely just shut them out. And like almost every single deck has like that card where in the side deck where like one card is going to completely shut down like practically the entire deck or majority of it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're definitely right on that one. Whenever that option is available, that's what I'm gonna try to go for. If
Mm-hmm.
there is a card for that kind of matchup that does that, that is what the card I want to side, right? Like I
Yeah.
want every single card I side to be high impact, because otherwise, why am I siding it?
Yeah, exactly that, because you don't want to side in like a lackluster card or anything like that that's gonna like slow the game down, unless like you're maybe like a control deck or whatnot. But even then, you would still want like the highest impact cards. Like for example, like you want like the best floodgate against Drytrons if possible. So like you could argue like there can be only one is like kind of okay, but like it can be heap with a Nightmare of Phoenix or whatnot. But you want to figure out like what's the best hand trap. Like if for some reason some people are actually playing Mind Drain, like that would be a great hand trap. If just for some reason someone is actually playing that, just as an example, and also to get rid of the hand traps. But you want to make sure that every single side deck card in my mind is like high impact and does the most damage possible to whatever deck it can, and that can also apply to several other decks that be used as well for its versatility for that matter.
Yep, yep. You're definitely right on that one.
So let's kind of bring us around full circle now. Let's go back to the Remote Duel Invitational that's happening this weekend. And since you're not playing it, what do you expect to see as far as the meta goes for this weekend?
So, generally speaking, I think tri-brigade's a very popular deck. I think Dragon Link has been really popular lately,
Mhm.
especially since it has a good tri-brigade matchup.
Mhm.
Drytron is interesting. I think people are very reluctant to play it just because it is really difficult. It's Also, a deck that can't really utilize hand traps as well as the others can, because it's a very heavy engine deck, and it takes advantage of being a heavy engine deck. And
Mhm.
that often means that when you're going second, you will have to play into your opponent's full board, and that is the hardest thing to do in Yu-Gi-Oh, right?
Mhm.
So it requires a certain level of skill, or like just a certain level of understanding of your deck as well as your opponent's deck. So it's often more difficult than people are willing to do, and it's just more stressful than people think is worthwhile. So I don't think that deck will see very much play.
Mhm.
And that was correct at the last invitational too. Even though Drytron was a similar contender that format as it is now, no one played it. So I think
Yeah.
it'll be very short used in this one. I
Mhm.
think more people will be on Dragon Link because it has gotten more popular since the last one. I think Tri-Brigade will still be very popular. I think Prank Kids is almost completely out of the meta, even though its hit was not that severe.
Mhm.
But it's just like, severe enough where, like, why would you play Prank Kid over Tri-Brigade now? Even though Tri-Brigade's hits kind of remove the zoo engine, but there's still like so many ways you can play those cards. They're so generically powerful.
Mhm.
You can take advantage of a lot. And then some of the other decks, I know Phantom Knight has been rising in popularity lately. There's a lot of decks that you could choose to play. I think the format is open enough. Like the only overwhelming power is Drytron, and because not enough people are playing it, I think you can actually have a lot of cool choices that you can use.
Mhm. So in saying that, for a lot of people that are playing the events, you've been referred to as the second place king, and you finally got yourself that first win back in April. What would you tell everybody else who kind of had like similar struggles to you, that can get up there but just can't quite finish the job and win that championship?
Well, honestly, once you're in Top Cut, it is kind of luck dependent because, a lot of things need to go right for anyone to win a single event. You can
Yeah,
do the best you can to give yourself the odds to get into Top Cut, but once it's in Top Cut, all it takes is one error or just one time being unlucky and you're out, right? You only get one loss. There's nothing else. Like if you lose, you're out.
yeah.
So you just have to put yourself in a position to be as lucky as possible. And that usually just means that you have to build your deck better than everyone else, and it gives you the best odds, right? Like you just need to
Mhm.
play the odds game, and then you just have to keep trying, right? There will always be another event,
Mhm.
and even if you just keep losing out, if you get as unlucky as I have been, eventually it will happen, is what
Yeah,
people keep saying. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I was really glad that you were able to finally get that monkey off your back and get that championship, because I'm pretty good friends with Jesse myself, and you being around that kind of crew, I kind of root for that crew because I love Game Nation, I love Ray, he's an absolutely wonderful person. So seeing people from kind of succeed from like my area, and then like the people affiliated with those, it kind of hits nice to me. It's a nice little hit to my heart there. So I was glad that you won that championship back in April. So again, congratulations on that, and hope to see you at future events now that things are opening up. And I really appreciate your insight and your intellect that you brought onto the podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love being here. You should definitely see me in close to everything. I imagine I'm going to be involved in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to be hard to not picture you at an event now that you've been so prominent. It's so many events for the past couple of years now. So, you've have a lot of respect. Sorry, people have a lot of respect for you because we know that how well you work at the game, how skilled you are at the game, and how much you really give back and help out with being a Duelist Academy coach. So good on you for doing that, and great job on you for helping everybody get better. So, I really respect that, and I'm glad you were able to take the time out and come on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love doing it. Like, it's not something I do just because I think people deserve it. It's something I definitely enjoy doing, and as much as it is me giving back, it's just what I've found to really enjoy in life.
Yeah, and absolutely it is, and it's always nice to that you can kind of share that gift. Help others get better, because I didn't really have that kind of like help from when I started playing the game. So it's really great to see how Yu-Gi-Oh has evolved now that information is at like the touch of a button. It's not too far away, and so many like skilled players now are so open to distributing their knowledge and information in this game to kind of help promote the game and make it a lot better for everybody.
Yeah, I definitely think this was something I missed out on when I was younger, getting better. I just had more opportunities than most, I want to say, because I was surrounded by a lot of good players and they helped me grow. And I definitely like got better a lot faster than other people around me just because I
Mhm.
had access to them. And this is just basically our way to give that to everybody.
Yeah, and that's how I felt too. Like once I started, like I was not good for like 2 years, and then once I started surrounding myself more with like much better players, and then I felt like my skill was completely accelerated. So I feel you when you say that and empathize with it when you're being around better players like that, especially and Jesse Cotton being around him definitely will make anybody pretty much better when you learn from him.
Yeah, it's crazy. We started off as equals, and then he just kept winning.
Good thing that you guys are teammates when you do the 3v3. So
Yeah, yeah. He failed me then, but we'll go from here.
Yep, because I remember that you won your match, but unfortunately lost out of the team. I remember that. I think it was a tweet that you had, or it's on your Twitter account that you have that marked as your description, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, yeah. The very first person to win a match in the finals and not be a champion.
That's quite the unique honor that you have there. But again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Esala. I really appreciate it. Any shout outs you want to give before we head out?
Yeah, sure. Like absolutely shouting out Duelist Academy. If you haven't checked us out before, it's just a lot of knowledgeable people in the game, like myself, Jesse Cotton, Rafael Nevin, Paulo Gonzalez, Bowden Temnick, Ryan Levine. Like the list goes on and on. We have a lot of great players that are just willing to give back to the community, give out a lot of knowledge that they have and they've accumulated in the game, and just help people get better and accomplish whatever it is that they want to accomplish in the game, whether it's just getting better at a local level or they want to top their first YCS or they want to win a YCS. They have the knowledge to just help you get to wherever you need to go.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have definitely built yourself to be a very credible source and a way for players to get better. And I respect it greatly. Respect your team and whatnot. So it really great to see you guys out there, doing the Lord's work and helping us out and becoming better. Esala, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. You have yourself a wonderful day.
Thank you.
I love that goddamn image of Jesse just tripping over all of his stuff.
Yes, it's so good. Okay, I don't know if you've seen the video, but basically he has a security camera in his
Yep.
storage area, or where he does a lot of his work. And
Yep.
his dad actually caught that happening, and then he sent it to me.
Oh, okay, I was about to ask you, how did you get that footage? Because that's pretty goddamn hilarious.
Yeah, I just have the video of him tripping over his own bulk, and it's so good.